And good morning. You're flying the very unfriendly skies of Tironan. Excuse me, I've got the morning frog in the throat going here. Okay, so we have the KI 162-1 here, and that is the successor in the Japanese tech tree to the KI 94-2. And this is another strange aircraft. The Japanese had gotten the plans to the Hankel 162, and best reference I can find to this was that Japan had the plans for it, and some sources say that it was actually being designed. However, no record of even paper designs of this seemed to exist, which makes it a difficult aircraft to comment on the history, since we don't know that it was even seriously considered for construction. That's going to make it a little difficult to describe the history of the aircraft. I can tell you a little bit more about the Hankel 162, which this was supposed to be designed from, since they're using the designs from the German BMW series engines on this. And that aircraft was, they're both, well, you can't even really say what this aircraft was due to be constructed on, because we can't even find working design drawings on it, which is going to make it a little bit interesting to say. But the Hankel was designed of wood, and it had some problems with it. It was designed primarily of wood with a metal frame to conserve on strategic materials, which were in very short supply. The aircraft was actually started to be tested and become operational in April 1945 in Germany. And like the Mosquito, the wooden parts were put together with wood, thin sheets of wood that were glued together. Unfortunately for Germany, the actual glue factory that was intended to put the aircraft together had been bombed. And let me put the time frame. In April, these things started to fly, and training units actually scored some kills against Allied aircraft, and were taking losses. As of May 5th, Germany surrendered. So that's the entirety of the operational lifespan of this particular aircraft as it existed in Germany. It was designed, and I could see the appeal to the Japanese government in the fact that the aircraft was designed to be literally a throwaway fighter. And here's the problem. You had the 262A, which was the fighter variant of the 262. And through a lot of reading and sources on the 262, it was always intended to be a fighter bomber and a fighter variant. All other things being Albert Speer's book and everything else. You say what you want to say, but there's a lot of blaming of Hitler for everything that went wrong in Germany, and quite frankly, a lot of it was. But for the 262, the problem was that they had built some 1,600 fighters. They could never keep more than 200 operational for lack of parts that wouldn't arrive, for lack of fuel, and so any 262 that had to have parts for repairs to fly again was essentially grounded and never going to fly again. And that's from various notes on the from the Reich Air Ministry. It didn't make any sense. And Golan just said, look, it doesn't make any sense. You've got 1,400 of the aircraft laying around we're not using because we can't get parts for them. And the idea was this. So you had the BMW 003, the Messerschmitt and Arado bomber used a BMW 004. And so this was an engine with no aircraft. And so the 162 was designed to be a throwaway fighter. You took it up, it was made of cheap materials, you flew it. If it was damaged, if it was, parts broke, you just towed it to the end of towed it away from the airfield and forgot about it. Go get another one. It was literally a throwaway, disposable fighter, and it gives you an idea of the kind of shape that Germany it was in. Well, things were not terribly better in Japan, and you could make arguments that it may have been worse. There were, to be in Japan in 1945 was to be on the receiving end of a nonstop pain train of sheer horror. You had a government that was absolutely tyrannical. If you said anything against the regime, you'd find yourself in jail if you weren't murdered. Every major city had been firebombed. The loss of life was horrendous. All the strategic materials problems Germany had could go and be said for Japan. So this design made some sense because you could bring it out if it got shot down. Fine. They even had an ejector seat in the 162. Whether it existed in this one or not, I have not a clue. There's not enough of a surviving record to say too much about it. And so everything I'm saying about this is from the HE 162, not the KI 162. All right, so having a disposable plane, and you might even get your pilots back. Could have a lot of attraction to a government under that kind of stress for the same reason that both Germany and Japan and give you a time frame on that. Germany surrendered in at May 5th, and early September the Japanese government surrendered. So for what it's worth, the about 4 or 5 months apart, I guess, but pretty horrendous conditions for them. So this aircraft starts making sense under those conditions. As for its flying characteristics on the 162, since this aircraft never even made the drawing boards as far as I can tell, one of the test pilots for the Germany said he'd never flown an aircraft with such light and effective controls. That being said, structural failures were fairly common. Flameouts were just as common as they were in the 262, and they had 42 of these in an operational training wing near the Netherlands at the end of the war. They'd shot down several aircraft, but of the 42 aircraft, 13 had already been destroyed, 10 of them by failures in the structure due to the glue that they had substituted. Remember I told you about the glue factory that had been destroyed in Germany, and they found a replacement glue. What they didn't understand was that particular glue actually disintegrated the wooden pieces that it was supposed to bind together. And so you'd have things like the nose wheel assembly would start coming to pieces. the tail rudder assembly had to be treated throughout its life very gently. I don't know if that was due to glue or just a design fault, but it would come off. A British pilot lost his life testing one of those when he got a little too aggressive with one. It's an aircraft with severe problems. Um, that being said, there was nothing that couldn't be worked out with time. It was time that neither government had, obviously. Given the projected speeds, this would have replaced most of the aircraft, the fighter aircraft in Japan, given a choice. But uh, obviously, they didn't have that kind of time. All right, how does that relate in World of Warplanes? Well, in a lot of ways, you're getting a high-end Tier 8 instead of or a very low-end Tier 9. And you're going to start questioning me, and I'm going to answer you. The problems that you're going to run across with this aircraft is the speed, and this is an absolutely unupgraded. Just got the aircraft. Uh, you're starting off at 509. There are Tier 8 propeller aircraft, including an XP-72 I'm flying right now, that are faster. They don't turn better, but they're faster. So you start thinking about this, and you start thinking, well, okay. Then you come across the other bane, which is this. You have 230 millimeter cannon. You'll notice the rate of fire is 240 rounds per minute. And the effective range is just barely better than machine guns. So you're getting a machine gun type of damage output with the overheating problems and not a whole lot more range. And I'm going to guarantee you, given the range of these, are going to be archy, and I haven't even flown the aircraft yet. You're getting this absolutely cold from me. Okay, so that's problem one. Altitude on this is going to be fair. It's not good, it's not great, it's fair. And you know, when you got aircraft that are flying around at 8,200 and 8,500 feet, you know, this is going to be a little bit of a difficult one to deal with. So you got a mid-level turn and burn fighter that's not particularly fast and doesn't have particularly great DPS either. All right, let's go take a look at the gun upgrade. What do you get? Well, you get about another 100 feet of range, which will be nice. And that will jump up your damage to 480. Your airframe upgrade will get you some maneuverability, but you still at a 9 second. It's not like an 8 second 360 turn time. I'll give you an idea, but it's pretty turny. And then when you get the full engine upgrade, you end up at 534, which I believe is about where you start at with a Fury. So that's going to present us some challenges here. Let's go take a look at a Fury for a minute here, because I'm just curious. I have a fully upgraded Fury I am working on here. And I give you an idea. In fact, let's just pull the whole thing up here. So against the Fury, you're looking at a 10-second turn time. And this was he's going to have you by about 2,000 feet in altitude, 2,200 feet or so, 300 feet. The same 480, except his guns don't overheat. Well, they overheat, but by the time you overheat those things, you've been on somebody's tail for 10 seconds. A long time in combat. So it's going to be playing with some challenges here. But it is very turny, and that might get you out of some trouble. But the speed's going to be hard to, there's an aircraft out there at Tier 9 that are pushing 700 really hard. The Banshee, the ME-262 HG2, the Starfire are all 596 mile an hour aircraft. So it's going to feel very similar to flying a Tier 8 against a Tier 9 to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah. All right, so there we go with the aircraft. And let's go ahead and take it to battle and see how we do. So this is just a first impression. I'm not guaranteeing wins. We're not going to talk about how glorious of a player I am or anything else. Obviously, I think this thing is going to be a challenge. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I am enjoying my coffee this morning, so bear with me a little bit. Might be a fun furball fighter, though, and I'm hoping it will be. But I'm pretty sure it's a plane that's going to demand that you have your head on the swivel all the time. Right now, my speed is, max speed on this is 509, which means you got to watch out for Tier 8 aircraft overrunning and killing you.
Pilots, get ready for action. Let's go.
Probably could use a little volume on this. What do you think, gentlemen? I'll go help the guys here with the 6-second boost on it, which is not surprising. Yeah, I hit him once out of that. You really can't complain about the maneuverability of it, though. It's really no problem. When you do hit, you can definitely tell that you're on it, but it sure doesn't take it very long to overheat. Alright, I have an aircraft behind me. Let's deal with him accordingly. Boy, is that not an aircraft I want a fast turn and burn. By his standards, this would be a fast turn and burn. Alright, looks like about a full bubbles deflection. In other words, you take your sight. Now, high deflection, you're going to have to lead by one full bubbles diameter in front of the aircraft. Obviously, I'm way in front, way over my altitude capabilities. all the aircraft are, this exception. Let's see here. I made a believer out of that guy anyway. Let's get out of the... Got some effective hits on him. It's another 162. All right. You see the lead I had to pull him to get this working? Pretty funny. I got my flaps on and I'm already pretty slow comparison to other aircraft, but what the heck. I'll take the flaps off, try to get a little more speed out of this. Got an aircraft behind me. Let's get the... There he is. Surprisingly, I'm having some trouble closing them.
A rocket has reached the target. Enemy object damaged.
Got him. Well, whatever else can be said, this is a fun aircraft to fly because it will go wherever you want it to go. And we certainly helped capture the airfield. Alright, we've killed 5 enemy aircraft. Really not going to complain too much about that. That's number 6. Got an aircraft coming in. From what I've seen of the aircraft so far, you're going to not want to try to outmaneuver. You're going to want to shake his aim, and you should be trying to dive away from it, because it's not that... It is hard to see in this thing. Part of the map. The amount of lead you have to pull on this, of course I have an aircraft behind me here. Let's go ahead and, it's not an aircraft, you don't have a whole lot of hit points on this thing. It's not an aircraft you particularly want to see how much damage you can absorb. Now he's trying to outmaneuver me. Now, you'll notice I do not have bottles on this. I have the maneuvering to put out fire perk on it, so it's not something that I need, especially on an aircraft this maneuverable. And it doesn't make an easy target in as much as you can trying to catch another one of the same type of plane, give you an idea of just about how difficult a target this can be. Put this fire out. There we go. Yeah. Well, that's one way to put it on fire. He ran out of airframe. Alright, we have gone through the entirety of the battle. Let's go ahead and put up the numbers here. Unless we run out of aircraft, which we're not going to, doesn't look like. This will wrap up, and it's a 800-point game, so it looks like we've got this one pretty well in hand. In this fight, we of course were furballing the whole time, which is not the easiest way to spend your game, but it survived the entire time. Without, I hate that when it takes it out of that mode. You can't see what's going on with the game. It's a difficult target to hit. So long as you stay squirrely with it, it can be awfully hard to stay on target against it. The firepower is adequate against fighters. I wouldn't want to take this thing against a GA aircraft. I don't think you're going to have a lot of success given this, unless you stay fairly cagey with it. You can have success, but you're going to have to do beam attacks. Come at them from the sides, S-turn, and then come around. So our first victory in the aircraft, and it all obtained the hard way. Seven aircraft destroyed, assisted in killing another 2, did just over 2,000 points in damage. With the modifier, we got right at 8,700 experience, 74,000 in silver, and 436 in free experience. Not bad for a first outing. Team score, I came in number 3. Virtually all of it was spent over an airfield, which, as you guys know, is one heck of a trial by fire, but I think it was fairly successful. So used correctly, using a fireball and or in a furball and with the right mission, you'll have some success with this. You're going to be very vulnerable to the boom and zoomers. At your first indication you're having a run in on you, your best chance is to get turny. Just get squirrely on the guy. Don't make an easy target of yourself and be turned. Start your S-turn early and get behind that guy, and you're going to have a very limited amount of time to take him down. The challenge on this is the guns, of course, and the speed. That's the boogie-boos you're going to have to be fighting against. By the time you get the full upgrade, you are still going to have trouble running down Furies, for instance, and that's not that fast. You know, it's only it's going to be the slowest of the tier in that regard. Gun power is only adequate. And the fact that it's an archy weapon on top of that seems to be just... Obviously, you saw me kill some 9-something aircraft with it in one form or another, either assists or kills, or outright kills. And high deflection targets, you're going to need a full, your bubble. Take the outside of your aiming reticle, circle, and then double it. And that's the correct aiming deflection to put on to get the other aircraft in a 90-degree deflection, high deflection shot, and that should serve you pretty well. And that's fairly close range, but that's what it will take to get the thing done. I hate to say it with a Voodoo aircraft, but this would be better served by a quartet of 20s, World of Warplanes. And I would think a little bit about bumping up the speed a little bit if I was to make some changes to make this more of a fun aircraft. Though I had a great deal of fun with this. I'm going to tell you I am rather impressed with it, and I've got 0 mods because I just purchased the aircraft. But it was a fun aircraft to fight. I can see that it's going to get pretty tough later. Players get a little more savvy with what the aircraft is. This is an aircraft I absolutely love to see in my sights when I was in a 94 or a Banshee F2H, excuse me. Banshee, because you could line them up from a long distance away where they couldn't really maneuver that well and just blow them out of the sky very quickly. Your hit points on this is only 360. You're talking, tier 8, some tier 7 fighters came in at that. So you don't have a whole lot of health to play with to begin with in a game where a lot of fighters are coming in with 560, 720, Starfire's coming in at 800 DPS. You're not going to last long taking hits from those aircraft, so you're going to have to play this one cagey. All right, that's going to wrap this one up, folks. I want to thank you for spending some time with me. You've been flying the very unfriendly skies with Tironan, and we'll see you tomorrow.